Welcome back. It is power rankings time. It is. And yeah, there's the glare from the light right there. But I don't think it matters as much with the puck board as it does with the whiteboards and all that. So I don't worry about it as much. And I want to make sure it's as direct a view as possible. And that's why you don't get the direct view of the whiteboards, is because then you have the studio light right in the middle of it. So it's one of those limitations. So if you ever wonder, why does he have it on that angle? It's the only angle where I don't have the glare from here, or in some cases I have to balance it with the glare from the window. So there you go. Now you know. The more you know, right? Okay, so this week I'm using reverse retro pucks, so I decided why not wear a reverse retro jersey. I got this set of pucks over a year ago, or it was about a year ago actually, I guess. And I got it with exactly this idea, that eventually I was going to be using puck power rankings. I just didn't know how. So I got it on good faith and went, I hope so, because it wasn't cheap. It's not cheap getting a whole set of pucks. So this week's power rankings, we're going to see some changes, starting with number 32. Dropping one spot from where they were last week, it's the Chicago Blackhawks. That's right. The nice thing with these pucks, too, on the other side, it's got the regular logo. So that's kind of nice. It means it's two sets for the price of one. So, yeah, number 32 is the Chicago Blackhawks. Rough week for them. They've had a lot of rough weeks. They have not been out of either 31st or 32nd. This is the lowest they've been. 31st is the highest they've been. So, number 31, moving up one spot from where they were last week. And don't let this go to your heads, but Arizona has a win. The Arizona Coyotes, and there's the Space Coyote puck. The Coyotes have a win. The Coyotes are now number 31. And do the Coyotes have a chance of getting to number 30? We'll see. They might. Because number 30, staying the same spot they were last week, and I was ready to move them up. And then their most recent couple of games happened, and it's like, I can't move Montreal up because they're just not playing very well. So at 3-10 on the season, Montreal's 30th, but as Montreal fans have been saying, they're grateful for Arizona and Chicago because that's two teams that Montreal finds themselves ahead of. So it's unusual, but it looks like for this season, these three teams are going to be at the bottom maybe for a while. Number 29, dropping 3 spots from last week. Now, what's interesting is they were 29 2 weeks ago. They were 26 last week, and now they're 29 again, and that's Seattle. So if you were wondering, hey, so how you don't have a reverse retro Seattle? You're right, I don't. But I have this one. I like this one. It's a nice one. So number 29 is Seattle. It doesn't suit the rest of the scheme. It's a little weird, but we're just going to let that go because they don't have a reverse retro yet. I'm saying yet because next year the reverse retros are supposed to come back. Seattle will likely do a Metropolitans jersey, right? I don't know how you reverse it though. Number 28, dropping 6 spots from where they were last week, and they're starting to flirt with being in the same territory that they were the last couple of years, and that's Ottawa. I had a lot of hopes that Ottawa would be a little bit better than what they are at this point. And I'm not sure that we're going to see them recover from this. I mean, again, it's early-ish in the season, so it's possible. But for Ottawa, it does look like the drop has happened. And now it's a matter of how long does Melnyk and Dorian, how long did they look at this situation and say, that's fine, before they decide to make some moves? There are some young players that are doing very well. There are also some young players that are either absent from the lineup because they're down in the AHL or just haven't made that next step. Eric Brandstrom really stands out as a guy that was supposed to have taken the next step by now, and it hasn't happened. Number 27. Number 27. I was in the wrong column for a second there. I threw myself off completely. For a second there, I thought I was reading the wrong column, and I was going to start over, and I don't want to do that. I don't care if we've got an extra hour tonight. I don't want to spend that extra hour redoing the power rankings. I've had to do that before. Number 27, moving up one spot from last week, and that's Vancouver. They move up one spot because Ottawa drops below them. For Vancouver, it's another rough week. This homestand where they were supposed to, really build on what was a decent road trip, they haven't. And so, if not for that comeback win against the New York Rangers, this could be even uglier, right? And if that had happened, they would probably still be below both Seattle and Ottawa. Number 26, dropping 8 spots from last week. It feels like that drop is happening. They came back and won tonight, but for Detroit, it's really looking like that drop is taking place. They're now sitting outside of a playoff spot, and we'll see whether or not they can go on some kind of a winning streak. They really need to go on a winning streak in order to get back into the hunt. But they weren't expected to be this year anyways, so that's okay. In fact, of the teams that are on the board, the ones that were expected to be a playoff team, there were some that expected Chicago, some that expected Montreal, but for the most part, the other ones were kind of expected to be outside the playoffs, though Vancouver's start's been a little rougher than expected. Number 25, moving up 4 spots from last week, almost out of the bottom row, and that's the Kings. So I like what the Kings have been doing, but I do want to see more. You know, that 4-game winning streak's nice, and it's great. Everything's going well for them. I do want to see how things go this week before I would bump them up a lot more. But again, they move up to 25th. The California teams aren't nearly as bad as advertised. And so we only have one in the bottom row, and that one's at the front of the bottom row, and they may not be in the bottom row next week. Because there's a team that could drop into the bottom row next week. They moved up 8 spots last week. Now they drop 8 spots, and that's Buffalo. We knew eventually the wheels were going to come off for Buffalo, and it definitely looks like that's what's taking place now. They have a lead at home against Detroit. Can't hold it. The lack of fans there has to be... I mean, players wouldn't admit that it's affecting them, but it has to affect them on some level. Like, there's just nobody there. So, trading out Eichel is great. That's good. That's finally done. That saga's finished. But Buffalo, yeah, the results are starting to turn sour, and that rough loss they had against Seattle really kind of stands out, too. Next up, moving up 4 spots from last week. They're now number 23. This is the first time they've been out of the bottom row this season. I don't remember if they got out of the bottom row last season. I don't think they did. Anaheim. That's the Wild Wing. So, yeah. Anaheim is all the way up to 23rd. So that's impressive. It is. That they've moved up that far. And again, you know, if they continue to play the way they've been playing lately, they're fun to watch. It might be some sloppy hockey. They have technically only won 5 out of 12 games, but they're competitive. And again, they're fun to watch. And we'll see how long that's the case before things start to eventually... You'd think eventually they fall off and fall back into the bottom row, right? Number 22, moving up 1 spot from last week, and that's Dallas. For the Dallas Stars... I still have concerns with their scoring. I was impressed with how they came back and won against Calgary. I still have some concerns. So those concerns are there. I like their goaltending. I still think their goaltending is very good. I think their defense is solid. Their ability to consistently put goals in the net, that's been the problem. And so for me, I'm still really cautious with Dallas. Their record's still not great, so they're number 22. Number 21, moving up 3 spots from last week. Not a bad week considering, and that's Nashville. So they won a game in Calgary that maybe they should have, maybe they shouldn't have, but they won it, right? Saros goes in and steals it, and then they went into Edmonton, and McDavid and Draisaitl take place. And then they go into Vancouver, and they beat Vancouver. And I thought this was a good week for Nashville. So we'll see how they do coming out of this week and whether or not they can have 2 solid weeks in a row. But for Nashville, this was a team that, you know, was pretty low down on the board. They've moved up 6 spots in the last 2 weeks. I'm just looking at this week's and last week's, and yeah, they've been moving up consistently over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if that continues. Number 20, dropping 3 spots from last week. It was a hit and miss road trip through California for them, and that's New Jersey. For New Jersey, again, there's a lot of young players here. They're missing Jack Hughes. They just got Mackenzie Blackwood back. And there's a lot of times in games where they just seem kind of flat. We'll see if things change when they get back home, right? We'll see if things get better for them when they get back home. They're certainly not out of it. But in the Metro, with as tough as the Metro is, we'll see whether or not they can keep their head above water. Again, the return of Mackenzie Blackwood could be huge for them, although it's not like Bernier cost them the game against San Jose tonight or anything, because they won that game. So there you go. The goaltending has been pretty solid from Bernier. And so with Bernier and Blackwood, they should be able to stay in the hunt. Number 19, same spot as last week. I know they moved up at one point, they moved down and all over, and then they end up in the same spot, and that's Pittsburgh. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, number 19 on the board. This is, of course, now without Crosby again, without Malkin. Letang's back, Dumoulin's out. It's a lot. There are some teams that are going through a lot of guys in protocol, and I get the feeling that it's just going to stay that way for this season. It's going to be that way, that certain teams are going to have that, and they're just going to play through it. Last year they shut teams down. This year we're gonna keep playing. So and really it hasn't been as widespread as it was last year either. Just feels like it because we're still playing during all this. Number 18, dropping 10 spots from last week. 10. It's honestly, and this is one of those market corrections. So with power rankings, I'll have market corrections where I say, you know what, this team's too high, or you know what, this team's too low. There were a few market corrections made this week. Colorado, right here, Colorado. I know it's the Nordiques logo, but Colorado, number 18. So, yeah, it's been. I mean, it's tough too because they haven't had very many games where they've had everybody healthy and in the lineup at the same time. So they should turn it around, but again, they should. But I can't keep them higher up on the board than where they are right now based on what should happen later. Number 17, moving up 3 spots from last week. Cautious move up. They won a couple games on the road, although the teams they beat are lower on the board, and that's Vegas. So after the game against Toronto, which was rough, that was a very tough game for them. They came through with really good performances against Ottawa and then half of a good performance against Montreal. The good news for them is they only needed half of a good performance. They didn't show up in the first period at all. The first 5 minutes of the second, they were absent, and then they beat Montreal 5-2. So Vegas, that's a solid road trip for them. They're right now above 500, just barely. They're at 6-5. And yeah, we'll see if they're able to keep it up. If they can keep their head above water until they get one of the big three in there, whether it's Pacioretty or Stone that's back first, we'll see. But once they get healthier, and that has to happen at some point for them, they should start racking up a few more wins than what they've been able to so far this season. Number 16, dropping 3 spots from last week. Rough week for them. The Rangers don't want to see Calgary anymore. Nope. That game against Calgary tonight, that is the second time that Calgary spanked them in the same number of weeks. And so for the Rangers, coming off of a loss against Edmonton, it's in overtime, and a loss against Vancouver in overtime, the New York Rangers have kind of fallen off. They're 6-3-3, so their record isn't awful. But again, we'll see how things turn out for them as they go home and they're playing against other teams. And so this is where that even scheduling that we have this year should really balance things out. It's more of a balanced schedule than what we saw last year where you played 8, 9, or 10 times against a team, right? Number 15, same spot as last week. Didn't move them up, didn't move them down by the end of the week, and that's Winnipeg. And what's interesting to me with Winnipeg is, well, during the week, I do move teams around. And then at the end of the week, Winnipeg's in the same spot. They're right back in 15th. So we'll see how things turn out. That loss against the Islanders tonight, the Islanders were playing Islander hockey. It happens. It just shows the Islanders are playing well. The Islanders haven't shown up on the board yet because they're definitely playing well right now, especially considering it's a road trip and all that. So, yeah, Winnipeg got Islandered tonight. We'll see what happens to them in their next game. Number 14, this is a market adjustment I've made. They move up 11 spots. People got mad at Elvis for holding off and give Shesterkin his shutout and all this. Columbus has been really good since then. Columbus moves up 11 spots from where they were last week. And, yeah, last week they stayed in the same spot. Not this week. They're now 7-3. They've looked good. And that win over Colorado tonight, they looked good. Merzlikins looked fantastic. His numbers are pretty excellent. So for Columbus, 14th on the board. Huge jump for them overall. Number 13, moving up 1 spot from last week, is San Jose. Now, for the San Jose Sharks to be moving up the board while they've got 7 regulars on the protocol list is remarkable. I don't move teams up or down based on who's hurt. I don't move teams up or down anticipating, I think they're going to lose this week, so I'll move them down. There are power rankings that do that. It was one of the reasons I started doing my own power rankings, because I would see a team go 3-0 on the week, And then they would drop them on the power rankings and go, well, they won 3 in a row, but now their star players out, so we felt we had to drop them. And I thought, well, you don't know how they're going to play without that star player, so how can you drop them? So San Jose, without half their star players, without a lot of their players, they've played well. And the kids have played well. So it's given Doug Wilson, honestly, a pretty decent amount of latitude. First off, when the Evander Kane situation comes to a point where he's ready to return to the team, does San Jose want to bring him back? Do they want to, look into possibly a trade? And then on top of that, once guys come out of protocol, well, now they've got some guys who might have some market value. They might be able to move, right? So there's a lot of good things that can come out of this for San Jose. I've been pretty impressed. So while they don't come out with a victory tonight, they had a decent week. Again, considering the lineup they've been able to put out there, it's nothing short of remarkable. Number 12, dropping 6 spots from last week, is Washington. Now, for Washington tonight, they only lost their second game in regulation. But they've only won 5 out of 11. So this is where that debate comes in of, okay, so they're not losing in regulation, but. And so they have all these goals from Ovechkin. They have 10 goals in 11 games from Ovechkin. He's going to score 80 goals this year or however many he's going to get. But outside of that, there's still something with Washington that's preventing them, for me anyways, from staying in that top row. Where they're not losing in regulation often, but there's cracks there, and I think that, that loss against Philly tonight, either that wakes them up, we see them start moving back up, or this might be their new home for a little bit, depending on how well San Jose and Columbus play this week, right? Number 11. Moving up 1 spot from last week. They've now moved up 3 spots in the last 2 weeks, and that's the Islanders. Again, they haven't played at home yet. So what's remarkable is that the Islanders are 11th on the board, and they have 0 home games played. So it is possible that they go home, and if they play well in their new building, this could be an intimidatingly good team very, very quickly. They could put together a really good record, and I'm kind of here for it, right? I think that the Islanders, they're 5-2-2 right now? Yeah, this could be interesting because it's a 13-game road trip and then they go home. And if they can win at home, look out. Next up at 10, dropping 3 spots from where they were last week, is Boston. I'm not overreacting with Boston at this point. I mean, they lost against Toronto tonight, who you'll notice is not on the board yet. But I think that was more of an indicator that Toronto is on a heater. They are playing really well. They're very confident. Matthews is clicking. Marner's clicking. Tavares. All of it's come together for them. And for Boston, there are some concerns there. They do drop out of the top row. But I still see them as being a team that's 5-4. They were 5-3 coming into tonight. That's a 100-point pace over an 80-game season. So they're still getting the wins. There was the 4-goal game from Bergeron, and that's great because apparently, and I heard this watching the game tonight, there were some on Boston radio questioning whether or not Bergeron had the heart for the game anymore. I'm glad I didn't hear that because I would have yelled at the radio. I would have do a video about it. If Bergeron's not scoring, he's still a very useful forward. He's very good defensively, so I'm not concerned. I'm not overly concerned even with the fact they're 5-4. I think they're going to be fine. Maybe coasting through parts of the regular season and then, getting into a playoff spot. Maybe it'll be better for them as the underdog rather than as a favorite. We'll see. But yeah, Boston, I have them at 10. We'll see whether or not they drop because, again, the Islanders are playing well. If the Islanders keep playing that way, Boston has another setback. Odds are the Islanders pass them. Number 9, moving up 2 spots from last week, and they were going to be in the top row. That's Tampa. Tampa Bay Lightning. They were. But tonight there was a team that I said, I can't have them ahead of that team because that team beat them this week. Tampa Bay is playing well enough to win games here and there. They got a point against Toronto. They beat Ottawa today. What gets me with Tampa is they still have a good record. They still look like they're going to make the playoffs. And they can kind of sleepwalk through this season. They absolutely can. And so I'll be very interested to see what happens with them when we get to playoff time. Because that's where everybody's going to judge them, right? Like the regular season, there's all they're however many million over the cap, even though this year they're not over the cap at all. Really, I mean, comparatively speaking with other teams, they're not the most egregious of the teams right now. And so, yeah, I think it'll be interesting come playoff time. And how long can they keep their head above water? Because they lost a lot of depth in the offseason. And now without Kucherov, it hurts more. It hurts more because they don't have Coleman. They don't have Gaudreau. They don't have Gord. There's a lot of players they don't have that they had last year to turn to. So we'll see how long they can stay this high in the overall power rankings. Number 8, moving up 13 spots. This is one of those. It's two things. One, it's a market correction, but it's also the fact they're just playing really well, and now it's all clicking, and that's Toronto. They've got the power play clicking. Matthews is suddenly getting it together. I think he's up to 6 goals now. And so, yeah, Toronto suddenly has it going on. I think it's interesting, too, because early in the season, there were a lot of victory laps being taken on the Northern Division from last year and saying, see, all the Canadian teams are terrible. There are 3 Canadian teams in the top row. There are 3 Canadian teams, including Toronto right now, that are showing they're pretty good. And so for Toronto, they're still a good team. They're 7-4-1 right now. They're a good team. And the 5 wins in a row. At the start, it was kind of sloppy, so that's why last week's power rankings, they were lower. But they're getting better. They're getting more confident. Their power play started to click. Their top guns are starting to score. Campbell is looking as good as he did last year, if not better. They're good. So it's top row for Toronto. We'll see how long they stay there. Number 7, back into the top row, moving up 3 spots from where they were last week. And last week was a drop of 5 when they were down at 10, so they're back up to 7. That's the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild, I never thought I'd see the day I said this. They're not boring. They're definitely not boring. I don't get bored watching their games. I am entertained watching their games. I have no idea who's going to win most of the time. I may not know right up until the very end. I may not know until the shootout. And so for Minnesota, they've been fun to watch. The record is 7-3. There's been some ugly games along the way, but again, they're winning. So Pittsburgh tonight, is it a sloppy win? Yep. Is it a win? Absolutely. Was there a goal or two here and there that I'm like, how did that go in? Yep. And that's Minnesota hockey right now. So it's kind of fun to watch. Much like Anaheim, who were also a very boring team coming into this year. All of a sudden, they're not boring to watch. Number 6, moving up 3 spots from last week, and that's Philadelphia. For the Flyers, it's been a good run. So they moved up 7 spots last week. They were 16 2 weeks ago. Last week they were number 9. This week they're number 6. So Philadelphia now in the top row, playing very well. They go into Washington. They silence that crowd. They silence Ovechkin. Jones with a huge win. Carter Hart's numbers are pretty good. Goaltending's becoming a strength for the Philadelphia Flyers. I don't know that anybody saw that coming. So for the Flyers, yeah, it looks like they should be a playoff team this year. They're clicking, and it's kind of fun to see Giroux playing well. Konechny looks like he's having a bounce back year. Couturier's doing Couturier things, and their blue line has worked pretty well so far. So yeah, number 6 is Philly. Number 5, same spot as last week, so we don't see very much movement in the top 5. I think the top 5 are kind of established. And at this point, Calgary, while it was a rough overall week, in parts, right, the Dallas game and the Nashville game, then Calgary comes out, they did what they did against the Rangers, and Calgary stays in the top 5. And they're 7-1-3. Calgary's got a pretty good record going for them. They've played very, very well. I can't wait till the next Battle of Alberta, because it feels like Calgary right now is playing really good hockey, good offensive, exciting hockey. So is Edmonton. Can't wait to see them against each other again, because both Alberta teams are in the top 5. And so for the Flames, despite a couple of overtime setbacks, they got the points there. In both games, they played well, and in both games, I thought they should have won. They didn't, so they don't move up because of games they should have won. But I didn't drop them either. Number 4, which with the old power rankings the way I used to do them, I would have had to because it was all reactionary. Number 4, same spot as last week, St. Louis. So see, reverse retro. There you go. Yeah, so St. Louis is still at number 4. The game against San Jose was a good one for them. Hofer winning his first start, and he gets an assist in it. Who saw that coming? I didn't. Very, very solid performances all around for St. Louis. Without Ryan O'Reilly, hasn't really been a problem. And so I'm impressed with the teams that, despite losing some of their best players, they're still playing really, really well. So St. Louis, good on them. And it doesn't seem to matter who's in net. Husso had a shutout in his first game, right? Pretty sure Husso had a shutout in his first game. And now Hofer gets a win in his first game. So yeah, pretty good run for St. Louis. Number 3, dropping 2 spots from last week. And they've had some... I mean, their start to the season has been excellent, right? They set the team record with 9 straight wins, but for Carolina, this is Carolina Whalers because reverse retro. For Carolina, that loss today against Florida, that's your deciding factor. I can't have them ahead of Florida after that result. And yeah, so Carolina drops. It's one of those things where they meet each other, and as a result of that direct meeting with one another, I say, you know what? I can't have Florida beneath the Carolina Hurricanes after that result. Florida had them down 4-0 after the first, and they kind of cruised after that. There was the 5-minute major on Lomberg, and it kind of became a slog in points, but yeah, Florida was bringing it home. I knew they weren't allowing 5 goals in that game, so even though I tweeted about it, during the game, people were like, oh, you're going to jinx it. It's not a thing. I don't have hockey powers. If I did, we would be talking about the Vancouver Canucks having won the last 30 Stanley Cup rings and I have hockey powers. I don't. There's none. There just isn't any. It's not a thing. I've tried. I was the most superstitious hockey fan for a long time, and then one day I realized I'm just somebody. It doesn't matter. Number 2. And these guys move up 1 spot from last week. And it's interesting because with the Oilers, McDavid and Draisaitl are just having the most amazing bonkers start to a season ever. For Draisaitl getting 20 points in the first 9 games, he's the first one to do that since I think they said it was Mario back in 02-03 or 92-93, or it was a long time ago. So when you're putting up the kind of point totals that guys named Mario or Wayne did, and there's nobody else that's in that vicinity, and you have both guys on the same team in Draisaitl and McDavid, that's intimidating. And yes, in a playoff series, it is possible a team could shut that down this year. I really think with each passing year, it's going to get tougher and tougher to do that. This could be a big year for Edmonton. So they're at number 2 on the board. They're 9-1 on the season, and they just seem to be, really, really clicking. That game against the Rangers, they probably should have lost that. And then McDavid goes, hey, guys, just jump on my back, and I'm going to do this myself, and don't worry about it. I got it. And then in overtime, they win it. And, yeah, it's happy days right now in Edmonton, rightfully so. So number 1 on the board, moving up 1 spot from last week, back where some would say they belong, is Florida. The Florida Panthers, you could say they laid a drubbing on Carolina, and it depends on your point of view, of course. But, yeah, Florida, number 1 on the board. I think they're legitimately playing the best hockey in the league right now. Even without Barkov, they win 5-2 over Carolina. Even without Bobrovsky, even without Bennett. It is absolutely insane what Florida's been able to do. And it doesn't seem to matter who's in the lineup and who isn't. And this is a Florida team that hasn't won a playoff round since 1996. I desperately want them to win something this year. So it's an interesting board, too, for that very reason. So at the end of this year, I want to say this. You've got Florida that hasn't won a round since 1996. You've got Edmonton, who's been struggling to get back to their glory days, which ended in 1990 with the Mark Messier-led Stanley Cup after Gretzky left. You've got Carolina, who had the Stanley Cup in 06. They've had their struggles since then. They haven't been back to the finals since 06. You have St. Louis, who won the Cup in 2019, want to prove that wasn't a one and done. They want to be a contender this year. You've got Calgary, who hasn't been to a Stanley Cup final since 2004. You've got Philly, who haven't won a cup since 1975, haven't been to the finals since 2010. Minnesota, who hasn't been relevant in the Stanley Cup playoffs since 2003. They haven't got out of the second round since then. And you've got Toronto, who hasn't won a Stanley Cup playoff round since 2004. It is a remarkable top row that we have right now. We'll see if it holds up. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video, and I will say this for newer people to the channel and just in general. This is one video that I don't linger around in the comment section very much on, because I know there will be a lot of dissent and a lot of discussion, a lot of disagreement with where I have teams on the power rankings. But I go through these every night. I update them after every night's games are finished, and I do my best to keep them as accurate as I think they are. But again, it's not an exact science. So again, let me know your thoughts. And it is one of those things that sometimes for my own just for my own ability to go to bed and just forget about it and sleep, I just don't pay attention to the comment section of this video, because I know there are people who sometimes get kind of mad, and I get it. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. It means a lot. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.